What's up, everybody? Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged, joining you today to share a surprising development with regard to the 2024 U.S. News Law School rankings. Before I get into it, a little bit about LSAT Unplugged. We offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. Check out the links below this video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you out. So the surprising development with regard to the U.S. News Law School rankings is this. They have been delayed. They have been delayed by 1 full week. To my knowledge, this has never happened before. But this year has been a strange one in general with regard to the law school rankings, given that Harvard, Yale, and a number of the other law schools in the T14 and outside the T14 have boycotted the U.S. News rankings this year for the first time ever. In case that's news to you, check out my previous videos regarding the U.S. News rankings. The short version is that the schools pulled out in protest of what they say are undesirable consequences of how U.S. News weights different factors in putting together the rankings. And since the T14 law school rankings were released last week, and the full law school rankings were released privately to law schools recently, law schools are once again up in arms, calling up U.S. News, protesting, asking questions about why they're ranked so low, of course. U.S. News has decided to delay the release of the rankings in order to field questions from law schools and presumably make some adjustments to the rankings before releasing them to the public at large. This is, of course, quite strange. It's quite questionable. It's also unprecedented. It really delegitimizes the rankings more than they had been delegitimized already. The schools are, of course, unhappy with the changes if they dropped as a result of changes to the U.S. News methodology. U.S. News sent out an email to the schools letting them know they will be delaying the release of the rankings by 1 full week as U.S. News fields calls from the schools, answers their questions, and presumably makes some adjustments to the rankings in response to the school's criticism. I'm going to quote here from the email that U.S. News sent to the schools. As part of its normal graduate school ranking publication process every year, U.S. News gives schools an opportunity to review their data during an embargo period. This year, we received an unprecedented number of inquiries from schools and are devoting additional time to comprehensively address these inquiries. As a result, U.S. News will now publish the full 2023-2024 Best Graduate School Rankings on April 25th, 2023. More than 100 million students and their families visit usnews.com each year to access easily digestible data, information, and advice that they can rely on to help them make the most informed education decision. We remain committed to publishing blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you get the point. Basically, what U.S. News is saying here is that they are going to delay the release of the rankings by 1 week because the initial release date was going to be Tuesday, April 18th. It will now be Tuesday, April 25th, as they address schools' questions. My thought is, why does U.S. News need to address schools' questions? So many of these schools have already pulled out of the rankings in protest, quote unquote, boycotting the rankings, saying they will no longer send in data to U.S. News. But U.S. News can, of course, rank schools whether they want to be ranked or not. So why should U.S. News kowtow to these schools in any way? U.S. News doesn't really need these schools. U.S. News can rely solely on publicly available data from sources like the American Bar Association, which is really more reliable anyway than relying on what schools self-report, which of course can be gamed, it can be finessed. We've seen countless examples over the years. Most notably recently was Columbia University's undergraduate college dropped several spots in the rankings after they were forced to admit they had made some mistakes. So U.S. News is better off relying on the publicly available data from third parties anyway. And U.S. News also benefits, I would say, from having a rather antagonistic relationship with the schools it is ranking. If U.S. News is too close and cozy with the schools, wouldn't that raise some questions about U.S. News having an objective position from which to evaluate the schools and rank them properly? If they are a little bit too friendly with the schools they are ranking, then you might think maybe some schools will get favorable treatment, especially since U.S. News does not commit to a single methodology prior to receiving the school's data. Instead, they consider multiple methodologies based on the data they actually receive. They see what the outcomes are, then they decide which methodology they like best, which of course is a deeply flawed way in which to conduct any sort of ranking methodology. It's also possible there were some errors in the data that US News was using with regard to bar passage rates for each individual school. They may have been using data from the American Bar Association's website prior to the ABA having made corrections to that data. Long story short, of course, it is better to go directly to the source for each school contained within their American Bar Association 509 reports rather than using US News as a clearinghouse, since, of course, US News is more prone to errors than the American Bar Association would be. The American Bar Association is, of course, specializing in law school information specifically, and they are the ones getting it directly from the schools. And the schools are, of course, much more unlikely to lie to their accrediting body, the American Bar Association, than they are to lie to US News. All this to say, the full 2024 US News Law School rankings are coming out 1 week later than initially anticipated on Tuesday, April 25th, rather than Tuesday, April 18th. But you should not be relying on any data from US News for making your law school decisions. Much better to rely on data from the ABA 509 reports for each individual school, which include information about bar passage rates, employment data, and of course, admission stats like LSAT medians and GPA medians. While prestige is one factor that isn't, of course, important since we do live in the real world and prestige does matter to some extent, it's much more important to consider factors like scholarship offers from individual schools. And if you can get your LSAT score above the medians of the schools to which you are applying, they are much more likely to give you acceptance and, of course, give you significant scholarship money, quite possibly even a full ride where you would pay no tuition at all. I see this happen all the time. The key is getting the highest LSAT score possible and the highest GPA possible. If your GPA is already fixed, not a whole lot you can do about that, but your LSAT score is, of course, the biggest factor in the admissions process, and you have plenty of power to raise that significantly. And if you would like my help getting the highest possible score on the LSAT, I'd love to help you out. I'm looking for a couple of students who are aiming to achieve a 170 plus on the LSAT this fall and join me in my private intensive one-on-one coaching program. I do have a couple of asks from you, though, to make sure it's the right fit and to maximize your odds of success. Specifically, I'm looking for students who've been studying for the LSAT for at least 3 months already, have built a reasonably strong foundation in the basics of the LSAT, the different sections, and the different question types. And finally, I'm looking for you to have achieved a score of 160 or above on at least one timed practice test. If you meet these criteria, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Check out the links below this video to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you out. And if you don't meet those criteria yet, that's totally fine as well. We have a number of other ways we could support you as well, whether it's through our live online classes via Zoom, our on-demand video courses, small group coaching, or one-on-one coaching. If not with me, then with one of our amazing instructors. Again, we'd love to help you out. And if you found this video helpful, please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps with that YouTube algorithm, and I really do appreciate it. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.